The last dose. The crater smoldered with the scent of plasma and ash, echoes of the battle clinging to the twisted debris like restless spirits. Smoke rolled in waves across the broken ridge, and the sky, stained copper from the atmospheric fires above, made the dying land look even more forsaken. Amidst the wreckage of what was once a coalition outpost, a single human medic trudged forward. Her boots sloshed through mud laced with blood and scorched nanoweave. Her name was Ever Cade, and her uniform was torn, her hands trembling as she clutched the last dose of adrenaline pressed tightly in her fist. Ever was no hero, at least not the kind sung about in military hymns. She was a field medic, a responder, someone trained to save and stabilize, not to choose who lived and who was left behind. Her squad had been wiped out during the orbital strike that shattered the command bunker. Communications were severed, her evacuation signal had gone unanswered for hours. All she had left was a medical pack slung over her back, a sidearm she barely knew how to use, and one final ampoule of Vyrexin, 7, pure biosynthetic adrenaline strong enough to reignite a flatlined heart. Reserved for command officers or high-value species, it was the kind of shot that could save a general, or no one at all. She had nearly given up when she saw it. Half buried beneath a warped engine core, blackened and convulsing with pain, was a dragon. Not a Terran fantasy beast, but a real one, a hybrid drake, smaller than the warbred kind. Spindly, with strange silver eyes and bioluminescent lines running along its neck. One of the genetically diluted variants the Council deemed unworthy of breeding contracts. A rejected bloodline. It was wheezing, barely breathing. One wing was shattered, the other twitching uncontrollably. Sparks crackled along the metallic edge of a shattered inhibitor collar still fused to its throat. She recognized it immediately, it had been enslaved. Ever knelt, unsure whether it would strike or spit flame, but it didn't. Its eye met hers, only one unclouded by pain, and in that gaze she saw something ancient. Not feral, not beastly. Just tired. Her scanner told her it was dying, low blood oxygen, nerve collapse, internal hemorrhaging. Any reasonable officer would have logged the case and moved on. But there was no officer, no chain of command. Only her, the dragon, and one last dose of life in her hand. Ever exhaled, braced her knees, and whispered, "I hope you were worth something once." Then, ignoring every protocol she'd ever memorized, she plunged the syringe deep beneath the cracked scales near the base of its jaw. The awakening. There was a beat. Then two. Then the scream, not from her, not from the dragon, but from the world around them as the earth cracked and the creature's spine arched into the sky. A blinding surge of light erupted from its ribcage like a solar flare being reborn. Its pupils dilated, veins illuminating beneath its flesh, and the broken wing twitched violently, reshaping itself with popping tendons and threads of flame-like regeneration. The inhibitor collar shattered into molten shards. Ever stumbled backward, shielding her face. The energy seared the ground. The ash turned to glass. When the smoke cleared, the dragon stood. Weak, yes, but alive. It turned its head toward her, steam curling from its nostrils, eyes gleaming like twin suns fractured by memory. "You gave me your last breath," it rasped, voice guttural, barely formed. "Why?" Ever sat down in the mud, blood-streaked and exhausted. "Because no one else would." 2 solar cycles passed before the Galactic Council learned what had happened on Echelon Ridge. A reconnaissance drone, programmed to recover anything salvageable from the ruins, transmitted footage the moment it reached orbit. The visual data was warped, corrupted by plasma radiation, but one scene remained intact, a single human kneeling beside a dying dragon, administering classified medical aid. When the Council's archivists enhanced the footage, they saw what none of them wanted to admit. The dragon had survived. Worse, it had risen. Among the High Circle, where law was written in blood and tradition older than light dictated species hierarchy, the survival of that particular bloodline was not just unexpected, it was treasonous. That dragon was from the unforgiven strain, a lineage banished for crimes the Council had buried deep. Rebellions. Deviant consciousness. And something far more terrifying, empathy. These dragons weren't just dangerous, they remembered what it meant to disobey. Within hours, Ever Cade was marked for capture. Not because she was a threat, but because she had committed the one crime the Galactic Council could not pardon, mercy given without authorization. A classified bulletin was distributed across 25 systems. Her biometric signature was flagged. Every port authority on the inner rings was ordered to detain her on sight. No trial. No interrogation. Just silence. What the Council did not expect, what they couldn't expect, was what the dragon did next. It had not fled. It had not returned to the deep stars to disappear like its kind often did. It had followed her. The Guardian. Ever had tried to go back to ground, treating wounded refugees on the collapsed moons of Hentherus, keeping her face covered, moving only at night. But wherever she ran, the dragon came. Quietly, invisibly at first, and then not. One night she awoke in a canyon cave to find it curled outside, guarding her from scavengers. "I told you not to follow me," she said. It blinked, expression unreadable. "You used your last breath for me. Now I guard yours." News began to trickle across the outer systems. An outlaw human woman, protected by a resurrected Wyrm of a forgotten bloodline, was slipping through the cracks of empire. The whispers became rumors. The rumors became hope. And in the high towers of the Council, where light was filtered through crystal thrones and law was calculated to suppress, the elders clenched their teeth. Because somewhere out there, one medic and one dragon had broken the script. And worse, others were watching. The Council's first attempt to capture Ever came quietly. A mercenary cell, well paid and silent, was dispatched to an uncharted moon in the Vexery Drift, where their intelligence claimed the fugitive had last docked. She had been spotted treating injured miners poisoned by orbital runoff, risking exposure for creatures who could not even speak her language. The Council assumed she would be alone. Weak. Vulnerable. They were wrong. The mercenaries descended through the toxic mists with confidence. Their suits were forged from sealed Levian steel, their rifles laced with psychotropic paralyzers designed to disable even a dragon's nervous system. They swept the mining complex in silent formation, room by room, corridor by corridor. Until one of them stopped in his tracks, his visor flickering. On the walls, scrolled in blood-red ash, were words written in no known tongue. And then came the sound, a rumble, not from below, but from within. The dragon emerged from the shadows like liquid darkness made manifest. Its eyes burned with ancient fury, and when it spoke, the very air seemed to ignite. "She heals. You hunt. Choose your next breath carefully." The mercenaries opened fire, but their weapons seemed to pass through smoke. The dragon moved like controlled lightning, not killing but disabling, its claws precise as a surgeon's blade. Within moments, the hunters became the hunted. When the dust settled, Ever found the mercenaries bound but alive, their weapons scattered like broken toys. "You didn't kill them," she observed. The dragon's silver eyes met hers. "You taught me mercy has power. They will carry word, the unforgiven have not forgotten how to choose." But Ever knew this was just the beginning. The Council would not stop. They would send armies, fleets, entire systems to silence what she and the dragon represented. Hope was the most dangerous weapon of all. The reckoning. Word of the failed capture spread faster than the Council could contain it. Across the outer systems, downtrodden species began to whisper of the human medic who saved the unsavable and the dragon who chose mercy over vengeance. Rebellion stirred in the forgotten corners of the galaxy. The Council's response was swift and brutal. They deployed the Erasure Fleet, a armada designed not just to capture, but to make examples. Every world that had sheltered Ever and her guardian would be sterilized, their populations relocated to containment facilities. The message was clear: compassion was contagion, and contagion must be cleansed. Ever received the transmission on a dead-rock moon in the Kepler void. The message was from resistance cells she'd never contacted, allies she'd never met. They're coming for everyone you've helped. Billions will pay for your mercy. Run, or stand and fight. She looked at the dragon, who had grown stronger, its scales now gleaming with an inner light that spoke of powers long suppressed. We could disappear, she said quietly. Find some hidden world, live in peace. The dragon's laugh was like distant thunder. Peace built on the suffering of others is no peace at all. You gave me life when I was nothing. Now we give others the same choice. We're just one human and one dragon against an empire. No, the dragon said, its eyes reflecting stars she'd never seen. We are the first crack in their foundation. And cracks, little healer, have a way of spreading. The Erasure fleet arrived at the Tython junction expecting to find two fugitives cowering in the asteroid fields. Instead, they found something impossible, a coalition. Dozens of ships from species the Council had written off as extinct or irrelevant. Mining vessels armed with improvised weapons. Refugee transports converted to fighters. And at their center, a human medical frigate flying alongside a single dragon whose very presence seemed to bend space around it. Admiral Corvex, commanding the Erasure fleet, opened a channel. Surrender now and we will make your end swift. Continue this folly, and entire worlds will burn. Ever's voice came back clear and steady. Then burn them. But know that every flame you light will kindle 1,000 more. The battle was unlike anything in recorded history. The dragon fought not with the mindless fury of a beast, but with the calculated precision of a being that had learned both war and mercy. It moved through the void like a living comet, its breath not destroying ships but disabling them, forcing crews to abandon vessels rather than die with them. Ever, meanwhile, had turned her medical frigate into something unprecedented, a ship that healed even as it fought, its tractor beams pulling disabled crew members to safety rather than leaving them to die in the vacuum. The Erasure fleet, built to intimidate and destroy, found itself facing enemies who fought to preserve life even in the midst of battle. Confusion spread through their ranks. Many began to question orders. Some simply stopped firing. When Admiral Corvex's own flagship was disabled, he found himself rescued by the very fugitives he'd been sent to eliminate. Ever personally treated his wounds while the dragon stood guard, its silver eyes holding no malice, only a terrible, patient hope. Why? Corvex whispered as Ever sealed a plasma burn on his arm. Because someone has to start choosing differently, she replied. The new dawn. The surrender of the Erasure fleet sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. For the first time in 1,000 years, their absolute authority had been challenged not by conquest, but by compassion. Entire sectors began to declare independence. The rigid hierarchy that had kept the galaxy in chains for millennia began to crumble. In the high circle, the councillors raged and schemed, but their power was already bleeding away like atmosphere from a ruptured hull. Species they had oppressed for generations were remembering what it meant to choose their own destiny. Ever and the dragon, who had finally told her his name was Vorthak, meaning, keeper of last lights, in the old tongue, established a new kind of coalition. Not an empire built on domination, but an alliance founded on the radical idea that mercy could be stronger than fear. They traveled from system to system, not as conquerors but as healers. Ever's medical knowledge saved countless lives, while Vorthak's wisdom helped settle disputes between species that had warred for centuries. Together, they proved that different didn't have to mean enemy. The Council made one final attempt to stop them. They sent an assassin, a perfect replica of Ever herself, designed to get close enough to deliver a killing blow. But when the moment came, the assassin hesitated. She had been watching the real Ever work, seeing how she treated every being with dignity regardless of species or status. I was made to be you, the assassin said as she lowered her weapon. But I want to choose to be me. Ever smiled and extended her hand. Then choose. Years passed. The galaxy slowly healed, species learning to coexist rather than consume each other. The Galactic Council became a memory, replaced by something unprecedented, a truly democratic union where every voice mattered. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Ever and Vorthak returned to Echelon Ridge. The crater had been transformed into a memorial garden, tended by beings from across the galaxy. At its center stood a simple monument, a human hand reaching toward a dragon's claw, fingers almost touching. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd kept that dose for myself?" Ever asked, watching children of a dozen species play together in the restored grasslands. Vorthak's chuckle rumbled like distant thunder. "I know exactly what would have happened. You would have lived another day, alone and afraid. Instead, you chose to give, and in giving, you received something no amount of medicine could provide." "What's that?" "A galaxy where dying is no longer the only option." As the twin suns of Echelon Ridge set behind them, painting the sky in shades of hope, Ever Cade and Vorthak the Lightkeeper looked out over a universe transformed. The last dose of Vyrexin 7 had been given to save one life, but in doing so, it had taught an entire galaxy the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the greatest strength comes not from what we keep, but from what we're willing to give away. The end.